at the beginning, no one supported us. When we went to Atlanta, like people looked me in my eye and said, just because you're going there doesn't mean you're going to make it. I remember people saying like all sorts of comments like that, thinking we were nuts. That's why I want to be that support system in people's ears saying, yo, if you want to do this, it's possible. But that's why, just so for context, when I go into those stories, that's why I'm telling it. It's not like, yo, I met Scooter Braun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to say that, like, yo, I've seen these worlds. Like, I remember seeing Taylor Swift's fingers, like, she had no fingernails because of I had so much respect for her when I saw that her fingers were curled up because she's been playing the guitar since she was 4. You know what I'm saying? Like that inspires me. And like I've seen the details in what it takes for people to get their ideas to the world and build followings and make an impact on people.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the life stories behind the people on social media. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by TrueFan. Before we get into today's conversation with Tom Boyd, there's a couple things that we need to go over first. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to leave us a positive rating and review. Share this episode with a friend and subscribe to the show. I put out brand new interviews every single Monday, and a brand new Takeaways episode is an audio exclusive where I sit down and break down the most recent podcast episode of the week every single Thursday. And now, without further ado, I'm very excited to present to you my conversation with Tom Boyd. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the life stories behind the people on social media. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly. As always, today's podcast is powered by TrueFan. Today on the show, we are joined by Tom Boyd. People often refer to the Dos Equis man as the most interesting man on the planet, but Tom can compete for that title. He's had sushi with Scooter Braun, partied in college with Asher Roth, babysat Justin Bieber, hitchhiked with Kid Cudi, spent time in the studio with Pharrell, and even swam in P. Diddy's pool. People have often referred to him as Jimmy Buffett for the lifestyle that he leads, and today he is helping creators become better creators, and I cannot be more excited to have him here on the podcast today. Tom, welcome to the show.
That was good, man. I might take that for my website and put that put that as the landing page on my website. Comparing me to the Dos Equis guy, that's legendary. Thanks, man. I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for doing your research behind everything.
Oh, my pleasure, man. I'm excited to have you here. And when I want to start, I want to go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the days in Westchester, Pennsylvania, WC East High School, if I'm not mistaken.
Bro, what are you doing? This is crazy. Yeah. Westchester East. Let's go.
And so, like, what were you like as a kid growing up, even in high school? Like, what were you like? Did you have what were the goals, aspirations at that time?
Man, I never went back this far. The aspirations in high school, I think the big thing for me, the thing that is top of mind was to become someone that wasn't living in the shadow of my older brother. So so I'm a middle child, and children have a difficult time getting attention, so they learn how to get attention. But when I was in high school, when I came in, my brother was a legend, like an athletic legend, like good looking, all American, like literally came like he was like 4 years old, had six-pack abs. Like he was just like the dude that everyone wanted to be. So when I came in, everyone was like, "Oh, little Richie. Oh, little Richie." And I was little Richie for 3 years until like everyone graduated and like I couldn't be little Richie anymore. And then I loved it at first. Like I was like, "Oh, cool, I'm getting attention." But then I was like, "Wait, like all I'm doing is being compared to him." And then there was a moment where I was like, I gotta start flipping the script. I gotta stop playing the same positions as him in sports. I gotta start listening to different music. I gotta wear different stuff so people can't compare me and like my own person. So a little bit out of like just wanting to be recognized as me, as my original self. Even though I took a lot of pride at the beginning, like, oh, it's it's pretty cool to be associated with such a cool guy. But then I started to feel competitive about it, and I was just like, I need to be a different person. And then I don't know how that's kind of led to where I am today, but it's definitely um, I think when you're putting out content, when you're creating, when there's any bit of that, it's like a constant battle or a constant effort of trying to figure out what your voice is, how you want to show up into the world. And in high school, I just remember, trying to navigate that, that in with the, peers and social groups.
I'm curious what the situation was where you stole a Mace CD from Matt Schaub.
Yo, how where are you getting this stuff? Yo, you're like Nardwar. Um, uh, so Matt Schaub is, he just retired this year from the NFL. He's been in the league for 17, 18 years. He had strong run in Atlanta and then, like, 7 years in Houston as their quarterback, and he's always just been like a stand-up guy in the league, like a good solid QB to have on your team, and then he was a backup at Atlanta for a couple years. Uh, so Matt Schaub was my older brother's best friend. So he would come over our house, we'd play backyard football, we'd play, wiffle ball. Like I learned like he was essentially he calls himself the fourth Boyd brother because I have two other brothers. There's three of us total. He calls himself the fourth Boyd brother. He calls my parents, essentially mom and dad. He when he graduated, his parents moved away, so he was from high school. So he lived in our house that whole summer. He's someone that I've always looked up to and always bonded with. And he would drive me around to my he would drive me around all the time, and one time there was just a Mace CD on the ground, and I asked him if I could borrow it, and I just never gave it back. And, Matt's always been a big homie to me and just someone that I've always looked up with. He was probably the first example in my world where I saw something, back in the day, it was hard to be connected to anyone, like, kind of doing anything that was, like, outside of your town, if you lived in, like, small town PA or small town, wherever, right? And Matt was the first person that I saw put in the work, and I remember there was a moment where Matt, we would come over his house and he'd be shooting foul shots. And his dad made him make 1,000 or like 100 foul shots every single day because basketball is one of his sports. And I remember seeing that work ethic. He would when everyone else is playing video games, doing other things, he was putting in work. And then a couple years later, that work paid off when he was drafted into the NFL. And that was the first time I saw someone like come from small town PA to go and like make it in like an industry that is really hard to make it in, or at least get exposure in, or get an opportunity in, which Matt did, and he ended up having a tremendous career. But Matt was one of the people where I was like, oh, it's possible to do things that are uh, outside of this world.
So we got the work ethic and the ability to make it out of Westchester. Now, another key part of your narrative is music. And I want to talk about the best concert you've ever been to, which from my understanding is also the first concert you ever went to, Kanye West in Wilmington, rocking a pink polo.
Oh my gosh! So bring back my older brother into the story. Uh, Yeah, I think Kanye just I don't even think he had the full album out yet. I think he just had, like, instrumentals and he had, like, the leaked version of the album out. He didn't have the actual album out, and he had a show in Wilmington, Delaware, which is about 40 minutes away from us, and I think on a whim, me and my older brother just we've never been to a concert before, and we're like, "Oh, this'll be fun, like, let's go to" it was probably, like, 19 bucks, and we were, like, 3 feet away, and he was doing, like, his dances. Remember he would do the Jesus Walks dance? It was so rad, and you could just see the guy's enthusiasm on stage, and, I mean, in hindsight, I wanna say, like, "Oh, I knew he was gonna be big then," but, it was just really cool to see, Ye in that environment, and we were flipping out, we loved it. I think being able to be that close to a legend, and, like, look back at it, as your first concert is pretty neat. It felt like a local show too. It felt like it wasn't full, like, there was no one pushing up on my back, there was no one behind me, you know? It was just, like, hanging out, watching this dude, like, play his tracks.
To college. So that was high school. College now. So you stuck around, you stuck in Westchester for college, and you went to be a teacher, right? Because your whole family is teachers, like your mom, dad, siblings, everyone.
Yeah, everyone in my family are teachers, and they're great teachers. They're teachers that show up and they want to be there, and that's the best thing that you can do for the future of America and or the future of the world. Just like actually be a teacher that wants to be there. And I remember getting into the programs and realizing that there was so much in the way from actually doing the teaching part. There was the standardized testings, there was the dealing with the parents, there was like all of the other stuff that I just didn't like. And whenever like I had to like learn about that stuff or do that stuff, I was like, "Yo, this isn't for me." Like, the teaching part when I'm in front of a class, I'm crushing it, I love it, but I just felt being too restrained, and I knew that I wanted to explore other avenues.
And so I've had like I have a quote written down here said that once you realize that like being a teacher wasn't for you, you're just kind of floating through college, right? So how did like when you're in that, what's your advice to someone that's going through that situation now where they don't necessarily know what they want to do and they're just kind of floating around, like looking for just distractions to distract themselves from the fact they don't know what they want to do? Like what's your advice to someone in that scenario?
Yeah, that's a great question. One, I would start reading. I would start reading anything by Seth Godin, Stephen Pressfield, and listening to Tom Bilyeu podcasts. And I feel like that'll get your brain going. Next, I would create a side project sprint with 2 to 3 of your good friends and say, "Hey, let's make a project where we are the bosses, where we get to say yes or no to the final product." It could be creating a snapback brand. It could be, "Hey, let's create a concert at our school," right? Like, let's do something that uh, we get to be the autonomy and the accountability to see this through. Like, if it fails, it's on us. If it succeeds, it's on us. Because so much time is spent not doing projects where you have accountability, and you only really learn when you have accountability for whether or not it works or not. Because if I fail for the brand I'm working with or like the company, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect my bottom line. But when it affects the success of your project, you learn a lot. You develop a bond with your friends, and then you start to pick up a knack and a sense for the skills of the things that you like to do, what the world's responding to you about. So yeah, pick a sprint, like a 3 to 6 month sprint of a project where you can say, "Hey, let's do it. It doesn't need to be a business that we start and be partners with forever. Let's just pick this thing, go all in." And I the reason I say that is like I sort of started to do that towards the end of my college career with Asher and with our friends unofficially. And that was when I started to feel like more purpose and more like excitement about like what I had to offer to the world, and yet allowed me to um avoid the distractions of just like partying and just slogging through.
I like the idea of doing it as a sprint because I feel like that's something not a lot of people talk about when it comes to quote unquote finding your passion is like it overwhelms a lot of people because they're looking for that thing they could see themselves doing for the rest of their lives. And you're never going to find that by doing something just off the rip. So by doing that sprint 3 to 6 months, you're going to get a sense, right? And like you mentioned Tom Bilyeu, I listened to his interview with Cal Newport and they talked about finding your passion is finding like minor areas of interest and working at them. And over time, as you become better and you put time into it, it'll become a passion over time. So after 3 to 6 months, that gives you like a good benchmark of whether you actually love this thing you're going to do or not. And then if you know going into it, it's only 3 to 6 months, it's not a lot of wasted time. And you've already set the rules in place that you could potentially move on after this. So it's not going to be deemed as wasted time. You know, it could be finite when you go in.
Exactly, and I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit, but I started directing and shooting music videos or co-directing with my team of friends, and we were just making funny songs, putting them out, and I was, like, an integral part of being, like, on camera, like, writing the lyrics, rapping them, like, in the videos, making the songs, and it was a really fun experience, but I set out to do that. I was like, "I wanna be, like, the artist. I wanna be the guy. I wanna be the guy." But then, like, towards the end of it, I was like, I think my knack is more creative direction, storytelling, writing, directing, and not I don't really wanna be, like, someone that performs and goes on tour and is on stage." So, like, I had to do the project, though, to see what I was good at.
100%. And then even if you don't stick with that, you're stacking skills on top of each other now, which allows you to differentiate yourself down the road.
Exactly.
But speaking of Asher, you first heard of him because I believe it was the guy across from your dorm room went to high school with him or something like that.
Where did I even say this? Yeah, yeah, Kyle Vector. Kyle Vector, yeah, it's actually a really, really funny story. I never even said this story. I'll tell you this story. So, I remember coming in, to my dorm room late night, and, it was, like, probably, like, 2:33 PM, and I remember I was on the 4th floor, and I didn't like my roommate. And I come in and I go into my room and my roommate is playing Madden with the volume on 100. It was so loud, and all I wanted to do was go to sleep. So I was just like, "Oh my gosh." So I was like, "You know, I'm just gonna wander around the dorm and just, like, see if anyone's, like, hanging out in the lounge areas." So I ventured down to another floor, it was the 2nd floor, and there was all these people hanging out. And I just sat down, never met any of them, and just started chatting it up with them, and just, like, shooting the shoot, no idea what I was saying. Like, we were just, like, having fun, right? Just connecting, I didn't know him. And I think in the conversation, I mentioned that, like, like, I'm trying to find another roommate. And so, like, nothing happened. I went upstairs, went to sleep, went to the cafeteria the next day, and I walk in, and there's this table, and they're all like, "Yo!" And they're all the people from the night before. They were like, "Yo, come sit down." And I sat next to Kyle, and Kyle was like, "Yo, I know that you don't like your roommate. The guy across the hall, his roommate is transferring. Like, you should I'll give you his number, you should connect with him and come move down here." And then so I ended up working out next semester, I moved down there, and it's funny, I don't think if I went into that room, if I didn't venture down to the 2nd floor that night, I would have never met Asher. So Kyle is the one that I became friends with across the hall, and they started hanging out at mutual parties, and, like, that's how I got to, like, you know, our worlds, me and Asher's world overlapped. So I put that in it I put those pieces together more recently. I was like, "Yo, if I don't venture in there, have that conversation with those people, make that, like, kinda, like, random connection." That's just the way everything works, though. Business works, networking opportunities, it's just you don't know where the connections are gonna come from.
No, 100%. And it's always cool to look back and connect those pieces. Like, what is that small little decisions that I made that just had like such a crazy domino effect? I just think it's crazy.
I appreciate my roommate for playing Madden that night.
Absolutely. And so you first officially quote like met Asher, from my understanding, his wasn't in a great, we'll say, headspace at the time when you first met him at a party.
He was spitting bars. He was freestyling, and there was 2 guys in the freestyle battle, and one guy was trying really hard. You know how, like, the one guy is and then Asher had his hoodie up, and he was just smiling, and he was just flowing, and I was like, "This guy's pretty cool." Like, he doesn't seem to care, but he's really crushing it.
And so it was a couple days later or a couple weeks later where you're driving to work late and he comes running out of an alley and flags you down because he's also late to work or something like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh, and then, I decided that, you know, whatever, I could be 10 more I'm already late, I should, you know, what's 10 more minutes? So, I picked him up, and I drove him to work, and we exchanged numbers.
And I've heard you say that you don't think he remembered you from that party because he
Nah,
was
not
just
the least bit. He doesn't remember he doesn't remember. I love him. He doesn't he doesn't remember the last conversation that me and him just had. I'm just kidding. No, 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 no. No, that's a joke, that's a joke. But yeah, he didn't remember that.
so my question is, did he come running out of this alley flagging down any car that would just pull over and drive him to work?
I don't I think it was maybe because I was driving slow and, like, maybe I waved at him too, and he was just uh I can trust this person." I don't even know. I have no idea actually, but it was I'm telling you, it was he was tucking in his Kildare shirt, that he worked at, like, once a month. You know, like uh, yeah, I don't know why he trusts me. Maybe I mean, small town college world, you know, people just trust people. Plus, it was, like, a while ago.
Fair enough, because this is back like oh 06, oh 07 probably.
Yeah.
And so then from that moment, kind of like after you drop him off at work, like you guys kind of stayed in touch, you met him at some, like hung out with him at some other parties. And then you kind of just start hyping up around campus, right? Like with no intentions, like you just thought he was dope, right? And you're like, let me just kind of try and help this guy out, right?
Yeah, I just totally believed in it. I saw that people I had this I remember seeing people around him, and I was like, "Why aren't people screaming this from the rooftops?" And I was just like, "Well, I can do what I know how to do and just tell more people about it." And I started telling more people about it, and, like, one thing leads to another. Next thing, I'm, like, driving them to studio sessions. We're just developing a relationship, and I think it's kinda good, like, what I noticed in a creative w if you're doing anything creative, especially then in a small college town where no one was really pursuing any sort of arts or creativity, like, independent of, like a traditional career, uh, there's not that many people that are, like, get it or support it, and, like, for me, I was like, "This is really neat. I just wanna, like, help it," and then I realized it's hard for him to promote his own stuff, and I was like, "I'm game to be the cheerleader. I'm game to be the guy that's like, 'Yo, you gotta listen to this,' because it almost makes him look a little, like, too promotional if he's asking people to do stuff, but it's like, if it's his like, a supporter, then it feels better."
Yeah, and so, like, because he had, like, a pseudo manager, investor type guy who was kind of around him at that point, but no, like, team or anything, right?
Nah, not really. Just like homies that would, yeah, show up and support when it, yeah, he had a lot he had, like, good friends, a couple good high school friends that, like, kind of gave him the foundation of, like, his recording process, but, at Westchester, yeah, not really anyone that was, like, immediately helping him. A couple, like, music producers, but yeah, we didn't have that much trust in a future relationship with the guy that he was working with, even though, like, he was an integral part at that time, like, helping him get the resources.
Yeah, and well, like, you at one point, you went and bought, like, a cheap mic from Staples that was used for conferencing for him to record on, right?
Yeah, yeah, we got that mic, and what we would do is, we would have college parties either at my house or his house. He lived across the street, and we would get bored of the party, like, really quickly. They were, like, not bangers, they were, like, hangouts that would develop into, like, party scenes, It wasn't like we were at the rage house, but, like, we would go into our room, like, with like, a small group of people and just, like, freestyle, like, make bars off of, like like, little ideas that we saw at the party just to make our friends laugh, and we would record them. Literally, it would be a one-take recording. We would record the music, like the instrumental. We would download instrumentals off the internet and then record our vocals and the instrumentals at the s and yeah, the instrumentals at the same time on this cheap mic. They are the grimiest recordings ever, but, they made our friends laugh, and that was the goal.
And that was back at Matlack Street, right?
The best street in America, Matlack Street, Westchester, PA. Don't come to Westchester and not drive through it. It won't mean much to you, but the stories of that street, like, just walking down that street, looking into the front decks, the porches, it's just college town, vintage college town, scenery.
And so you mentioned you were, like, driving him to the studio and stuff, and, like, you'd drive him to shows at different point times, and I'm curious if you could tell me the story about a video you made called "Boogieing Up and Down the East Coast."
Yeah, so that I bought a JVC handheld camera on maybe Amazon. I don't even know what I bought it from. I remember I I didn't have much money at the time. I think I probably won some money, gambling on football games, and and I got this camera, and, like, I always loved, I don't know, I like when even younger, when everyone had, like, a home camera out, I'd be like, "Yo, like, I wanna get on that camera." Like, I just, like, loved, like, the just capturing things, and so I got that camera, and then I would just capture everything, everything. Like, just filming, like, having no sense of, like, what a good shot was, what made funny, like, what made I didn't know the word content. I was just, like, filming stuff, and a lot of it had nothing to do with Asher. Other like, some were just, like, trips we were taking, like, the Outer Banks, just, like, random stuff, and then, after, like, a year of that, I just had, like, a bunch of fun clips, and, I think, like, the end of it, it was, like, the first trip we took to Atlanta, and, or maybe not, I don't even know. We took some trip, and then I was like, "Oh, I should put all these clips together." I took an Earth, Wind& and Fire song, and I made it as the backdrop, and then it was, like, that song and then Snoop Dogg's song, "Keep Bouncing," and then I just put all these clips in it. Oh, and, like, kind of the core of that was our homecoming video where we had a U-Haul truck with Asher's face plastered on the side, and we would pull up to parties and, like, have and it had big speakers, and, like, people would just be, like, dancing in it, dancing on top of it, and that was like the the core content of that video. Just stupid stuff, just rambunctious stuff, but I think it got I don't I posted on YouTube, and it got a couple hundred views, and a couple hundred views, I'm like, "That's crazy, a couple hundred people seeing, like, this?" I started getting insecure, I'm like, "Oh, what if they think we're nuts?" Like, but yeah, that was my first sort of, foray into creating content.
Yeah, and I've heard you say in the past too that, like, you didn't realize you had this creative muscle until you started working with Asher, like, kind of allowed you to flex that muscle more and more. And so, like, how was it just, again, kind of back, we talked about finding your passion. Was it just trying things out and figuring out, like, that you were creative? Because, like, you used to think creativity was reserved for people with paintbrushes and stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally accurate. Asher having the guts to put it out was super inspiring to me. I mean, I think a lot of what inspires people too is just it's their immediate friend group, is the people around them, and their actions inspire them. You know, it's like, how are people carrying what are people doing? Like, what like, how and, like, Asher just doing that in itself, it gave me an excuse, number 1, to kinda, like, live vicariously through him, whether I was, like, helping create content, either just behind the scenes, just seeing it, just having an opinion on it. I could just, like, kinda get a sense of the world, and then, yeah, um eventually too, just you know what I realized? It's like I'm gonna try to find an analogy here. I don't know if it's gonna work. Okay, I'll tell you. This is the analogy. Say you have like a big jacked friend, and like you're not so jacked, but you go into like a new environment. You kind of feel safe with him around. Like he's gonna no one's gonna mess with us because he's like physically superior to everyone. I felt Asher was like creatively superior to everyone. So I was like, oh, if I'm just around him, then like really won't like I'm protected, like at least I don't know, like there's kind of like this safety in knowing that like the attention's really going to be on him and yeah, it just makes it safe for everyone else to do this too. So I think that's a I don't know, I think that analogy kind of works. And so after just doing it, like I would be confident to hop on songs. I was making songs like by myself. I remember like the first time I played a song for him, I was like so nervous. And I remember like you get one smile out of someone laughing. And I started to realize that like really where my skill set showed up wasn't anything musical, not a musical bone in my body, but the lyrical content, like writing catchy lines, writing like a succinct message in a couple words that would evoke an emotion out of someone. That's what that's what I was good at, and even in hindsight, like I still do that every single day in the marketing, the videos I make, the company I work with. But go ahead. Yeah, I think that answered the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you do? Like you obviously you had Asher, but what do you do if you're someone that doesn't have that jacked creative friend? Like, how do you find that person?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so more recently, I've been so I built a YouTube not to skip ahead, but I built a YouTube channel. I did all the things. I made my own videos, and then in the last year, I started creating a brand new account. And I purposely haven't shared anything of this brand new account on my old page because I wanted to feel what it felt like starting from zero. Like I wasn't weighing on any of my old followers because I wanted to like feel that like yeah, starting fresh feeling. And the account's almost up to 5,000 on Instagram. TikTok's almost like 35,000. Probably by the time you hear this, it's at 100,000, maybe a million, who knows? And and so I wanted to feel that what that felt like. And what I would say is, and this is how I did it. I created 3 goals. I created a metric goal, a process goal, and a fun goal. And the metric goal is like, okay, such and such followers by this time. And the process goal is an amount of videos published or published a week. So that's the process. And then like, that is important. That's especially I think that's more important to get to like, find a process goal that gets you to 100 videos in a certain amount of time. Maybe if it's YouTube, maybe it's like a year or 2 years. If it's TikTok, it might be 2 weeks to post 100 videos. But, like, find a process goal where you just have to go through the creative process of coming up with the idea, producing the idea, and publishing the idea. And each part of that sequence, you're gonna learn about, like, what works for you, what you enjoy doing, what the audience is picking up and putting down, but don't put too much worry into the the metric goal at that point. Focus on that process goal at the jump. And then the fun goal for me, I'll just give you an example, is on my podcast right now I don't even have a metric goal for my podcast. I did it first, but I decided it's just going to be a process goal to post every single week, and then within a year interview Will Smith. And then so that's a fun goal. That's a fun goal that, like, if I get closer to the opportunity of filming Will Smith, then, like, the brand will be better, the podcast will be better, I'll be having fun with it's just like a cool moment to reach for that, like, even if I miss, the podcast will be, it'll help the podcast in some way, shape, or form.
It's shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, or whatever that saying is.
And honestly, go back to earlier in the conversation, find a sprint too. Do it for 30, 60 days. Like, if like, 100 videos is too frightening for you, pick up, some sprint. Whether it's I want to do 10 videos, I want to publish 10 tweets in 10 days. Like, find some sprint that you can just put the blinders on and just do, and yeah, really focus on the process and getting better as opposed to, like, how viral it's going.
And what's the name of that podcast?
Creators are brands. Creators are brands is the podcast. Creatorsarebrands.com. Go check it out. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I just interviewed a legend yesterday too, and, it was amazing.
You wanna say who the legend was?
Uh, Andrew Warner of Mixergy.
Okay.
Yeah, he started essentially the first podcast. He started podcasts before podcasts were podcasts. He had an internet show interview show that before podcasts were a thing. He was actually like supposedly the second person, but the first guy stopped doing it. So he's been asking people questions for a long time, and I was very intimidated asking someone questions. Um, 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 that is like a professional. He's literally coming out with a book about how to ask better questions on podcasts, and I was really nervous, but I ended up crushing it. And he even asked for my episode to be played on his show. So that was just like a cool little moment where I was like, "Oh, I can do this. Let's go."
That's huge. There's not really many better compliments to podcaster than someone asking to borrow
Yeah,
this episode.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's awesome. And now, like, kind of on the topic, I know jumping around a little bit here, but talk to me about the name behind the podcast, Creators Are Brands, because there's some significance to that for sure, especially with where the world is and where the creator economy is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I could talk for an hour about this, and actually, if you wanna learn more, go listen to my first episode. I think I talk about it for an hour. But the idea I've always had a love for the individual creator who's going from idea to publishing to building an audience to monetizing it. I just think it's fascinating. I learned a lot by working with Asher. I learned a lot in that world. And like we were creators before the word creator was like a coined thing. We were doing it. We were publishing, we were exploring it. And at that time, the most accessible thing to be a creator was like kind of being a musician. Like a YouTuber didn't exist. Like people posted on YouTube to complement the business, but it wasn't a place to go and build your like media library. It was like to say, "Hey, here's a video, but like go buy the product over here," or like go listen to that. Like it wasn't the mission. But now there's YouTubers, there's TikTokers, uh, there's Pinteresters, if that's a thing. There's tweeters. Like there's everyone that is like that has the ability that doesn't need to go. And at the time, we had to go through Scooter Braun, a big label, all these gatekeepers to get like the actual brand to the world. Now you don't have to do that. And I've started to realize over the years that like what we were doing in 2008, 2009 is accessible to almost anyone with an iPhone. Like, and it really is. If you really wanna build an audience around an interest, an expertise that you have, it is possible. And I just have love for it. My wife is a calligrapher, a graphic designer herself. We we'll be in bed, going to sleep right before we go to sleep, like talking about uh, you know, course platforms. Hey, did you see this new course platform? Like it offers this feature now. Like it's just something that we like. Like I'm interested in. Like I really love this world. I have these conversations already. I've always been told over the years from friends, from Asher, from different musicians, friends like Danny Gavers, who's a YouTuber. They're like, "Yo, something about conversations with you make me feel like it's possible," and I take a lot of pride from that. I told you my parents are teachers and coaches. Like that's sort of what we do. We hype people up, and it's not like we don't. I don't like to say the word like I make it possible for them. I just show them what they're I help them to see what they're capable of. It's nothing that I'm actually doing, they already have it. It's just like I think, the I don't know, the way I approach the conversations, it's just people can see clearly what they're capable of. So I was like, I'm gonna put that into podcast form, and that's the show. And the whole creators are brands is I've worked for brands as a contractor, as a full-time employee. I've been paid for sponsorships, and the worlds are merging. And a brand is essentially a feeling. It's a relationship that this thing has with its all their audience. And that's what creators are doing so well. And that's why so many brands want to work with these creators because they have the trust in the relationship. So I also like it too because creators are brands. It gives people, I actually went back and forth with some friends about it because they were like, yo, it's like too obvious. And I'm like, you're right, but I want it to be that obvious. I want people to know exactly what I'm about when they see the podcast title, right? Like they were like, just go with bonus footage. But bonus footage, like it's because it's my Instagram and my TikTok. Because I think about it. I think about branding. I have a book right here, brand therapy. Like this is I love talking about this stuff. Uh, bonus footage is my TikTok and my Instagram, and they're like, "Yo, just make it that." I was like, "No, I want people when they're scrolling on Spotify podcast app or iTunes, or I tell it to someone, they know exactly what I stand for. Bonus footage doesn't. So that's why I kind of landed on that name and I stuck with it, and it's I don't know, I'm having fun with it.
And I know bonus footage was like an account you already had. Was there an intent to switch the name ever to Creators Are Brands across all your platforms or?
No, there might be an intent to change it to my name, Tom Boyd. Change the Instagram and the TikTok to Tom Boyd. Uh, but I'm not gonna change them to Creators Are Brands. I like the bonus footage name for the purpose of the TikTok and the Instagram. I don't know why, it's more of like a feeling. It's like, I'll tell you why. Because I think those accounts, the way I see it, at least the TikTok is more casting a wide net. And then the podcast is for the long and narrow net. Like, it's like the deep relationships that I'm building with the audience on the podcast, but the TikTok is I want people I use terms like social media on TikTok instead of creator because not everyone knows. Like, in our world, everyone knows, like, the creator economy, like, the future of it, but I want like, some people are creators, they don't even know that they're creators. They're like, "Who you talking to, bro?" You know? So, yeah, I like bonus footage because it's a little more general for that platform.
That's just an interesting point though about not everyone understanding creators. Like, because I would have assumed just talking about creators broadly would have been a wide enough net. So that how like where did you come to that insight? Like, how did you put those pieces together? Because I don't think I would have.
I think it was so I work with a lot of people that are creative entrepreneurs. They're filmmakers, they're directors, they're full-on freelancers. And I kind of put that into, like, the gig economy. That is like, I'm paying this person to do a service for me. But the creator economy is when that person, this is my, like, kind of way of thinking about it, is when that person then starts to create those videos to build their own audience. So you're either building someone else's audience or you're building your own audience. And then there's a lot of people doing both, and that works really well, where they're doing consulting or some sort of service for someone else, but then they're building their own audience. And I don't know how I'm gonna tie this back into the answer. Oh, yeah, so I noticed that a lot of people in that world, I could just in nuanced ways, I could just understand that they didn't like, the creator economy was a new word to them. I was like, "Well, if the creator economy is a new idea to them, but I know that they understand, that people are making money on YouTube, people are making money on Instagram, on TikTok." Like, that is something that like, anyone can understand immediately. So, it's more like the concepts behind those instead of saying, I'll work in creator here and there, but even if you look at hashtags on TikTok or or what's it called? On Instagram, creator economy has very few uh, numbers behind it. But if you put up Instagram tips instead of creator tips, it's like billions compared to creator tips. So it just sort of like that sense that people don't identify yet as creators. Like, I think the people that are hardcore that follow Colin and Samir, that there are people that do get that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a sense. I don't know. I might be wrong, but um, that's the way I'm rocking it.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong at all. And so, how do we get more people to realize that they are creators?
Mm. How do we get? Well, I believe everyone has the potential to be a creator. I believe that it comes down to not everyone has the courage to be a creator because it takes a lot of guts. I mean, even for me, it's easy to to work for a brand, do a commercial for them, make a video, and like put it out on their channel because I'm not being like my personality, my identity isn't being judged. But when you put it out under your own name, it's a bold it's a bold move. You're putting it out there and people get to decide whether or not they like you or not. And they'll tell you. So it comes down to the courage to do it. And for me, what helps me the most is because I was super insecure about it. Like for years, honestly, I think I it's just sort of clicked in the last 2 years, even though I've been putting out content for 10 years, the why, the understanding behind, like, the impact that I want to make as an individual is more important than what a negative comment might mean to me. So, like, I just you have to accept the fact that the more people that like you, the more people are gonna show up to try to cut you down. Like that's just it's just how the internet works. And if you don't want to play that game, then maybe just continue to work for brands. But I will tell you, it's possible if you can start to find the mental fortitude to put the emphasis on the people you're impacting with your ideas, your shorts, your comedies, your vlogs, whatever, and know that they're more important than the haters. It's worth it.
And early, speaking with like no telling people it's possible, you mentioned how people will talk to you and tell you that just hearing you speak makes them realize it's possible. And I will kind of second that because I remember like in prepping for this, I listened to podcasts that you've done and stuff like that. And I remember being like, man, I'm thinking too small. I got to think bigger. And I remember like the next
Yes,
morning,
it's
I like
working.
yeah, 100%. Cause I like journaled and I was like, what would my podcast look like if it was more than just a podcast? And I like this whole like 3-4 pages of just like notes of like, what could it possibly
Yes.
be? And that came from listening to you and just getting fired up listening to you. And I think like where a lot of creatives struggle, and you mentioned Seth Godin earlier, and that's the dip, right? So what is your advice to creators as they're going through a dip?
I'm going to answer this question by referencing Seth Godin's blog, and the title of it is Q&A, The Dip and Knowing When to Quit, because he's much better at articulating it than me. I'm still trying to navigate when's the best time to quit and when's the best time to keep going. And he says, ask yourself this: is this something that will respond to guts, effort, and investment? This helps you to decide whether or not this or where you can commit. And then if you do commit, you're not just browsing, you're in it. You know for sure that you want to go all the way. So is this something that will respond to guts, effort, and investment? And it kind of gets you what he's saying is sometimes when you're feeling that short-term pain of uh, there's no there's no results yet. And if you ask yourself, will this respond to guts, effort, and investment? That'll give you clarity on knowing whether or not to quit or not. And for me, I mean, the podcast is a good example. I've said yes to more things recently than I can take on, and I want to take a couple weeks off, but I know that if I take a couple weeks off, I'm going to lose momentum. But if I keep going, it's going to respond to guts, effort, and investment because I'm getting a sense of the buzz, the initial the initial reactions that people are giving me, the feedback that it's going to respond to guts, effort, and investment. So that's enough for me to keep going uh and work through these short term obstacles.
For sure. And then like with that too, with having taking on more than your bandwidth allows for, when you're in that dip, it makes it easier to try and jump to those other things instead of sticking it out with the thing that you got going already, right?
Bro, first, I want to interrupt you and say you're great at asking questions.
Thank you.
I gotta learn from you. I gotta learn from you. You're very articulate, and I like where this podcast is going because we went going off on a tangent, and you're doing a great job with the questions. Can you ask the question again though? because I totally forgot it in going on my rant.
Yeah, because so now that you have these things popping up, all these extra things that kind of you said yes to, that's more than your bandwidth allows. When you're going through a dip, that makes things tougher because now there's all these distractions, these bright lights you can kind of go and chase. That allows you to kind of get out of that the dip, quote unquote, versus sticking with the dip and riding it until it kind of crests.
So what I'm trying to do right now is I am working on building systems around how I create my content, when I create my content, and having a process about it. And yeah, and so that's what I'm working on right now. Like right now, I just, I have a Calendly link for my podcast and they're like, every other day and like they're sporadic. But instead, I changed the Calendly link options to just Wednesdays and Thursdays. So I know in my head I can compartmentalize. Those are days I'm doing recordings. And all the other days I can focus on the other things that are moving things forward. Whether it's the marketing of it, whether it's doing the TikToks or my day job. And my day job, I do have a day job too. So this is just proof that you can create momentum in a side in any sort of side project. And the way that I see this, I enjoy it. I have a lot of fun doing it. This is shooting hoops for me. The way other people might go kayaking or like pick up some sort of side hobby. Like I love creating content. I've been doing it since I bought that initial JVC camera, and I think for me now too, I'm just I'm more confident because I just, uh, I don't know why I cared less. You know what? The reason I care less about what other people think is because I I'm much better at, um, focusing on the wins and like things where people have told me firsthand, "Tom, like, if you didn't I didn't have that conversation with you, I would have quit and went and done this." Like, people that are full-time creators have told me that, and I'm like, "Okay, well, if one person can tell me that," and, I don't really care what, like, so and so said randomly on the internet, to try to bring me down because I don't know, I know that it's affected at least one person in a positive way, and that's what I kinda come back to. That wasn't totally the answer to the question, but it's like, I guess going back to the why and why I really care about this.
And you enjoy it like just like as if you're shooting hoops and you're as good at it like when you're playing cornhole.
Dude, how do you know I'm good at playing cornhole?
I can't remember where I heard that or how I
Bro,
found that out.
bro, I am nasty at cornhole. Yeah, because my brothers are really good at cornhole, so I have to be good. I told you, it's a competition, guys, like, I gotta beat my older brother, although my brother whooped my butt this summer, in cornhole, so we go by seasons, and this summer, he definitely was the king of the beach, and, he definitely won. And I found out why. He's a phys ed teacher himself, and I ran into one of his students, and he was like, "Yo, we play cornhole every day at study hall." So he's been practicing all summer, and I didn't realize that.
He's getting his reps in. But like speaking of like talking about how full time creators have come to you about potentially quitting, bring me back. We're jumping backwards again now. The car ride back from Penn State, Asher's talking about quitting music. Bring me into that car ride and what that conversation was like.
Yeah, he broke up with his girlfriend. We were in traffic for 6 hours, and he was like, "Guys, I'm gonna focus on teaching. This isn't for me." And he was just kinda in the dumps, and I feel like I called his bluff right away, like, mentally, but I was just like, "Oh, yeah, 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 bro, like, whatever you wanna do." And, and then, yeah, that night, Scooter Braun called me.
Wait, that was the same day?
It was the same day, bro. Joe, you can't script this stuff, bro. Like, Scooter called me the same day and said, "Give me the details on Asher Roth." I hung up the phone because I thought it was the cops because Asher's house was getting noise violations, and he has a really deep voice. "Give me the details on Asher Roth." And, I was just like, "Nah, bruh." And it was like, then he called back and, he was like, "This is the most important phone call of your boy's career." And he was like, "I'm such and such," and started, like, name dropping, and then I believed him. And then I ran across the street, told Asher, "We gotta call this guy," and, yeah, we that's how we met Scooter Braun.
There's one little part of that story I want to add here because it's something that we
How
can
we got
tie
the
back.
number?
Oh, I mean, there's that. There's that too. But what I was gonna say is, at the time Scooter called you, you were playing Madden. So had your roommate not been playing Madden back in the day, you never would have met Asher.
Dude,
And then Scooter
Madden
called
keeps
you when you're
popping
playing
up.
Madden.
That's crazy. Yeah, dude, I love that game. I don't know, it was, I think it was, like, PlayStation at the time. I don't know what Madden's like now, but dude, Madden slaps. Uh,
Was that like Madden '06? I think it was
I
an
don't know,
Eagles player
man.
on the cover, man? I can't
I
remember.
don't
That was like
know.
my Madden, was
I
Madden
know that
'06.
Randy Moss and Tom Brady were the guys that season.
Fair enough. And so how Scooter got the phone number was on, you made a Facebook page for Asher and it had your phone number on it, but his MySpace had his like pseudo manager's number on it. So had he called the manager, the Scooter stuff never would have happened, right? But he happened to call you.
He happened to call me. He saw that I was, like, probably just his, his boy, like, someone that's just supporting him, not his manager. I actually never talked to Scooter why he called that specific number, but he's a really smart dude. I mean, if you hear the Justin Bieber story, he called everyone, like, around his world to get in touch with him. Like, he ended up calling, like, the community center that, like, hosted, like, he saw the sign of the community center in the background. Like, there's a crazy story about how he ended up finding actual Justin Bieber's family's number. So, I think Scooter is just a really bright dude, and he knew that if he went through the suits, he might not have been able to talk to Asher directly. So he called my dumb ass, and it worked. It worked, man. I'm glad he did.
Yeah, because then so after he called you, you got the phone to Asher, who talked to Scooter for like an hour, and then after that phone call, you guys thought you made it at that point, right? Like
Dude
crazy party
dude, I
after.
just got the chills. We had a party in his basement. We woke up all his roommates. They brought out the herbals, and I don't do the surprisingly enough, people think that if since I'm friends with Asher, I participate in the herbals, but I don't. Uh, but I was probably sipping on a little nice drink, and we thought we freaking made it, and then Scooter did not hit us back for, like, months, and I messaged him on Facebook still, like, consistently, and he would give me one-liners, and then, months later, Asher was leaving Borat, and Asher texted him and said, "Trust your gut, let's make moves," and he was like, "Yo, if you can get down here, it's the VH1 awards or, like, the Source Awards or some sort of
Bet
award show."
Awards?
What?
Was it the Bet
BET.
Awards?
Yeah, yeah, I think it
Yeah.
might have been yeah, yeah, and then, yeah, he flew him down there. Or no, he flew himself down there, and then he met all these people. He came back, and it was my birthday, and we all sat in our basement drinking Wild Turkey whiskey, and he sat there for, like, hours just telling us stories, and, like, we're, like, on the edge of our seat, like, so stoked for this, man. It was really cool.
What are one or two of those stories that you can still remember all these years later?
But I remember him saying that he rapped for Shaka Zulu. He sat down and rapped with Shaka Zulu. I remember he said when he walked into Scooter's apartment, the first thing Scooter had him do, Scooter's this type of dude too. Like he's a there's no one in the world like Scooter. There's nothing you can even compare him to. And like knowing Scooter now, like this is such a Scooter story. Like literally, the first thing he did was he walked in. He was like, "What's up, man? Yo, can you help me? Can you help me hang this art?" And he literally had like there was art like before they even talked and like got to know each other. Like he's like helping him like hang this art like in his first hallway when you go into his condo on his wall. And why would someone do that? But like Scooter, I don't know, he just sort of has a way about him where he just skips all the the fluff in the intro and just gets right into, knowing each other.
But and like at that time, Scooter Braun wasn't Scooter Braun that everyone knows today, right? It's like, why did you guys put so much stock in him before? Like he called you and then ghosted you. Like you guys are pursuing him heavy. Like why are you guys all in on Scooter at that point before he's like the big household name that everyone knows
Yeah,
now?
he had one article, local article from Atlanta, like a Bucktown, or what was it? Yeah, it was a local art. I think it was called Creative Loafing. If you look up Creative Loafing, Scooter Braun, there's an article with him like driving a purple Benz, shaking Snoop's hands, shaking Kanye's hand, and we just thought we never saw that. We didn't know anyone that shook those people's hands, and we thought he was the real deal. But also, he has this like immense confidence about him, as if he already made it, that just shows up in every interaction that he has. And, yeah, it just for some reason, it was the best bet we had, and, yeah, he made us believe in him. There was another moment, yeah, so, yeah, I don't know where you wanna go with it next, but, yeah, just the way he carried himself, is just he has this confidence about him that makes people believe in him.
What was that moment that you just thought of?
The moment was when, we were going back and forth on whether or not we should actually move to Atlanta, because Asher ended up getting a deal, through Scooter. Scooter got him a deal at Universal, and then I was still in college. I had about a year and a half left because I transferred and had extra credits that I had to fulfill, and, Asher just dropped out completely, and he was like, "Yo, I wanna move to Atlanta, but I'm not going unless you go," and I was like, "Yo, I gotta wait a year and a half, and finish school, or my parents just won't be stoked." And so I was just like, trying to do the right thing, and then, Scooter called one day, and he said, I remember he said, "Hey, man, if you guys don't move to Atlanta soon, I'm gonna start putting all of my attention into this new artist I just signed." And he's a 13-year-old future Abercrombie& and Fitch model that sounds like an angel, and that sings like an angel. And I was just like, "Alright, bro, like, what are you talking about?" And he was like, "Once he's down here, he's gonna get all my attention." So that inspired me. I was like, "Alright, you know what? I'm gonna go for it." And I went to my guidance counselor at college and asked him, if is there any way that I can graduate early? And he was like, you can if you just change your major to like professional studies, which I still don't know what that is. And then I ended up graduating early, moving like literally that semester. I graduated and I moved to Atlanta. We got a U-Haul, moved to Atlanta with Asher and two other friends.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that phone call from Scooter where he's telling you about Justin Bieber happened when you were sitting in an Acme parking lot, right?
Facts.
And like one thing too, I wanted to ask before the move to Atlanta, there was a trip in between that first trip that Scooter took, or not, sorry, that Asher took, and the move. And so that was your first trip down, and that was for a studio session with Ben Allen that Asher had. And then Asher ended up sticking around after for some meetings, and you had to drive home alone, and like your car broke down like 5 times or something on the trek back when you were alone.
I remember having so whenever I turned my car off, it wouldn't turn back on, so I wouldn't stop the car. I didn't wanna pull over, so I was literally I was peeing in Gatorade bottles as I was driving on I-95, bro, and meanwhile, Asher was flying, probably first class in a jet to go meet Jay-Z and Steve Rifkin, and I'm driving back in my gold Honda and peeing in Gatorade bottles. But like, yo, I gotta tell you, the reason I like telling these stories is because I think it gives more context to if you see my Instagram, if you see my TikTok, if you see my podcast. I believe that I have a perspective on what it means to be a creative entrepreneur or creator, whatever you want to call it, that I have a lot of angles of this world from behind the scenes, from being the guy, from working the brands, from moments where I'm, just committing, driving a beat up Honda, eight, 8,000 or 800, 8,000, a lot of miles, peeing in Gatorade bottles so the car doesn't break down. Like I've seen so many different angles for like the lengths people need to go to make the stuff happen, and I have a lot of empathy and compassion for the person that just has the guts to go that path because at the beginning, no one supported us. When we went to Atlanta, like people looked me in my eye and said, "Just because you're going there doesn't mean you're gonna make it." I remember people saying like, it like all sorts of comments like that, thinking we were nuts. And like I'm like, yo, like we're on an island. Like if we didn't have us three, like just like all committed to this, I don't know. I don't like we'd end up being here 2 weeks. But yeah, just that's why I want to be that support system in people's ears, saying, "Yo, if you want to do this, it's possible." Like like in what some way, shape, or form, you just got to find the way to deliver your stories, deliver your visuals, deliver, package your ideas and give it to the world. But it's possible. So yeah, that was my quick tangent. But that's why, just so for context, when I go into those stories, that's why I'm telling it. It's not like, yo, I met Scooter Braun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to say that, like, yo, I've seen these worlds. Like, I remember seeing Taylor Swift's fingers, like She had no fingernails because of I had so much respect for her when I saw that her fingers were curled up because she's been playing the guitar since she was 4. You know what I'm saying? Like that inspires me. And like I've seen the details in what it takes for people to get their ideas to the world and build followings and make an impact on people.
And I think one thing that's interesting too, back to where people looked you in your eye and told you that just because you're going to Atlanta doesn't mean you're going to make it. It's like, what is their goal in that situation? I mean, you'd be like, you know what, you're right, and then not go to Atlanta. Like, even if you go to Atlanta and you don't make it, you still went there and had that shot.
Yeah, I know what exactly it is. It's when people see you doing something that they innately want to do, they want to somehow make it even. They want to somehow protect their ego in saying, okay, I'm doing the right thing by not doing anything out of my comfort zone. And so by them saying that, it, it, they feel like it protects their decisions. Like that's what I realized. Like, I'm really into healthy eating. And people get offended when I eat healthy, even though it has no effect on them because they think I'm saying you should eat this way. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying like this is what I want to consume. This is the best decision for me. I enjoy this. I feel good about it. And it's the same thing in the creative world. When people see you doing something that reminds them, oh, like because everyone deep down knows they should be eating healthy. Like when people's, oh, I should be starting that business, writing that book, doing that thing that is in the back of my mind. And when I see someone else have bold, inspired action to make it happen, I get offended, so I have to somehow bring it down and rationalize to make myself feel better.
And so kind of on that too, another thing that I've noticed when it's not just the fact that you make them feel like you're eating healthy makes them feel like they should be eating healthy. It's also that people don't like change, and it's not just the change that they make. It's like when other people change around them, that kind of impacts their world in a small degree. And so therefore they don't like that change that you're creating within yourself. And so they push back on it as well. You know what I'm saying?
100%. When people see you improving, you start to become someone else, right? And there's just different interest, and like now they feel like they have to change too. And yeah, people don't like change. You couldn't have said it better. So to protect them not having to change, they want to keep you the same.
And so how do you, like you said back in the day, like you guys had the three of you, so you were kind of able to rally off of each other. But like even in that case, like how do you have, like it's different when there's haters online versus haters looking you in the eye telling you that just because you're going means you might not make it. It's like what keeps you going in those moments?
I remember I have a journal. I have a journal somewhere where I wrote you know how like football teams like hang up like locker room inspiration, like locker room like newspaper articles saying they're going to lose. Like I wrote that stuff down. And I was like, you know what? Just because they said that, we're going to make it happen. Uh and I don't know if that helped or not. And I don't really now I don't think that that's like the healthiest way to approach that. Now I more so would just like, like maybe my actions might inspire them to maybe they don't see it right now, but maybe my actions over time will inspire them to take their own form of bold inspire action. And at the time though, I think that we were just um trying to put myself in the headspace at the time, because it was still a crazy gamble. Like, I remember 2 weeks in, I went into my one boy's room and we just cried. We were like, "What are we doing here? Like, this is stupid." We really wanted to move back. We didn't believe we definitely were down on ourselves and, had those moments of, like, this is a moronic idea. And I what pushed us through was probably, I mean, sign the lease. You know what? I'll say I think I don't think that it succeeds if we stay in Westchester. I think going and removing yourself. Here's an analogy I use. So I think something that helped us was, imagine you're a fish that's swimming in a fishbowl, right? And then someone takes you out of that fishbowl and puts you into another one, and you're getting in that other fishbowl, like, all these new scenes, like, the water's different, people are walking and, like, wearing different stuff, like, all the imagery, there's sun like, you start to see the world in a totally different light, but also you don't have the immediate, um limiting beliefs, the outlook on the world that like all of the people in your immediate circle in the other fishbowl had. Like you're in this new world, and that's what we felt like. Felt like we were on an island in Atlanta, and I get why a lot of artists like go and like go to Montana, go like random places to record their albums, to go because like it's hard to see clearly when like because we're tribal people, and like it's sort of our instinct to like wanna go with the flow, wanna see how everyone's seeing the world, like, wanna fall in line but, like, it's hard to create from that from that way of thinking too. So I think going down there, removing ourselves from all of the things that, like, we were comfortable with, forced us to, um, to just, see the world differently, and then the other thing is we're hanging around people like Scooter. He's bringing us around these musicians. He's bringing us around these studios, these entrepreneurs, these investors, and these people got bread. I'm around more millionaires in a month than I have been, leading up to that, and, so I think when you start to see this is I think once you see what's possible, right? When you see, "Oh, they've done it. Here's another example of someone doing it." Once you see examples of what possible, it opens up your brain, to accept it like, "Oh, I it is possible." Like, once you like I said at the beginning, it's like putting different glasses on and just seeing a world differently, and I think that was so important, us being down there and yeah, just, like, getting out of our comfort zones and having being forced to commit.
So how are you getting out of your comfort zone today? Because like then obviously you're a college student, so you have less dependence, you have less responsibilities, you can kind of drop things and go versus like now, maybe you can, but like I don't know if you could drop everything and move to Atlanta tomorrow.
The way I'm doing it now is I've been having interviews like this, podcasts like this, but also, I am dude, like, I probably have, like, 5 new people I meet a week on Zoom or on FaceTime, and through the DMs on Instagram or on TikTok. It is such an amazing tool, and it's such a collaborative, supportive community, and, DM someone, be like, "Yo, like, let's catch up, wanna learn more about what you're doing." It's that simple, and then just be like, send a Calendly link or just send your number and just get on the call with other people that are doing like, that have success in areas that you don't already have success in. Because you can learn a bit from them, and like you might have areas that complement them, and just rap and build those relationships. I come upstairs and like I tell my wife, she's like, "Yo, you were on the phone with that dude for 4 hours." Like it's like a Saturday, and I'm like, "Yeah, like we had, it was just a fun. I was just like really enjoying that conversation, and what he's doing, he's exposing me to his fishbowl." Right? Like his world, his way of seeing things. And once I get these little moments of like, oh, they succeed. Oh, he made this much off of affiliates. Oh, that makes it possible in my brain. Now, like once you get an example of it's possible, I think there's a lot of examples of that in history where like stuff never happened before. Then one guy did it, and then 3 months later, everyone did it. Like I think the 4 minute mile is an example. I think people writing like certain books and certain subjects, like as soon as someone's exposed to that world, Benjamin Hardy talks about. So I'm going on a rant. He talks about Benjamin Hardy's an author. He adopted a bunch of kids, a couple kids recently, and he talks about how just growing up in his house now, they see what's possible from an author, an entrepreneur, and their brain starts to make sense of that. And like before, they never had an example of that in real time to even consider.
That's interesting. So even though you can't physically be places with the internet now, there's ways to digitally kind of expose yourself to these new environments and get out of your comfort zone that way.
Bro, I could have said all of that in that one sentence. Yes, exactly. It's that, and, the other thing that I try to consider too, Simon Sinek talks about the infinite game versus the finite games, and the infinite game, I'm not the best at explaining it, but it's like or the finite game is like competing against someone else. So in the past, I would have saw like something my friend did or saw like and, like, really being like, "Oh," like, and like comparing myself to them and needing to be better than them and openly like us having conversations like, yo, I was jealous when you did that because I've never done that before. But now he says like find worthy opponents to elevate your game instead of trying to beat them. Use that as an example of what's possible, and then also play infinite games where it's like, is me doing this bettering everything for the long term, and like playing that game instead of trying to beat someone on like a very small finite scale. So that's what I do too. I've been, whenever I see something that in the past would have made me jealous or insecure because someone's crushing it, I say, you know what? Like, what can I learn from this? There's a quote I have. It's called everyone's hiking their own hike. And the other, it's a derivative of everyone's running their own race. I don't like race because a race means there's an end point. It means there's a competition. It means there's a start and a finish. But I think entrepreneurs, creators, podcasters, whatever, we're all different hikes. We're going through different paths in the woods. Some people are going further. Some people are going this way. Some people want to jump in the river, and there's no real like competition here. But you can learn from each other. So you can go on one hike and say, Tom, you got to come check out this waterfall over here. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to go check out that waterfall. And the analogy is the waterfall is like, okay, maybe I can learn from you. You're using Zencaster. And okay, maybe I should use that instead of Zoom. Maybe that's why his podcasts are a little better, and we can collaborate that way. So hike. Everyone's hiking their own hike, and we can collaborate with each other.
I like that. It's like taking an abundant mindset, not only applying it to yourself, but understanding that it can apply to more than just yourself, and everyone can win. It's not an individual game. I really like that a lot.
Exactly.
And
Yo, real quick, did you wear that red sweatshirt? Because I wear a red sweatshirt in most of my videos.
I did, yes.
Yes. Dude, you're thorough. I literally had it on before, but I was filming a skit and, like, I this was in one of the scenes, so, I wish we both had it, but keep going.
I was just say it was this one of my I couldn't find I had a yellow one because I know you mix up the colors of your sweaters in your videos. Is that intentionally? Is that like something you do that like if you're wearing gray clothing in a TikTok video, you won't pop as much versus if you have red, it might catch someone's eye?
Yeah, I've been experimenting with that. I actually That's a Gap sweatshirt. It's amazing. Everyone's asking me where I get it. Like it's like some like some like crazy brand. It's just Gap. I like Gap because there's no logos on it. But I'm gonna go online and buy like I want to buy like a yellow one, like a light blue one, because I think when you're scrolling, it definitely catches people's eyes a little more. It wasn't intentionally at first. I just wanted something that was plain and not like I didn't look boring in. But like I do notice that the videos that I have the red sweatshirt on tend to have more retention time.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to start wearing this one. It's also a sweater that I made one time. So like double the reason. So like maybe I'll have to start wearing it up in the red. But I know we're almost out of time here. And I told you I had a bunch of notes. We're on page 4 of 13 of my notes. So we'll have to run it back and do a sequel at some point. But I'm going to jump to my last 2 questions that I ask everyone at the end of every interview. And I know you're doing a number of these podcasts, so you probably do this often, but how often do you take the time to properly reflect on the whole journey?
The whole journey, not that often. Not enough. Uh, but there will be moments like there will be moments like I'm watching the Lil Dicky show right now. It's a great show. And there's a lot of moments in there that, like, my wife can't really relate to, and because, like, I've been in these scene like, I've literally been like, there's so many scenes where I'm like, because he's managed by Scooter now, and I'm like, "Is this writer someone from our world?" Like, I know Dicky, like, wrote most of it, a lot of it too, but I'm like, "No, it's probably just, like, these are, like, consistent things in the creative industry, especially being an artist." So, watching a show like that, like, has brought me back into, like, these, like, moments. I'm like, "Yo, this is so accurate." Like, it's so dialed in. But, I do journal. I do journal. I got a yellow journal, and I'll try to recall things. I do write down how I think I reflect is I do a good job of either when I have like an insight or like a lesson or idea that I remember from the past or I currently go through, I'm good at documenting them and writing them down and then telling them to people. And like telling them, teaching them, and sharing these ideas makes you internalize them. And yeah, so I think, I do it to a degree, but I think writing it down, journaling is a great way to kinda make those lessons tangible and apply them to your day to day now.
Yeah. And then you turn them into content. And then by teaching them, they stick with you even more.
Yes.
And so for my last question, I like to flip the script a little bit. So instead of me asking the question, it's you asking the question, but it's not to me. Pretend you have a crystal ball. You can ask this crystal ball any question. You'll get the 100% honest answer. What is one question you want to know the answer to?
You gotta give me a second here. That's a good question. That's a good question. One question I want to know the answer to. Oh man. All right. This could go anywhere. One question I want to know the answer to. Um, does my dog think I'm funny? Cause I be saying, man, I say a lot of jokes to my dog, and she just looks at me with like a straight face, man. I really want to know if my jokes are working.
I love that question. Like, you always get something a little different. I've never got anything like that as an answer to that question, and I love that. That's
Cool.
perfect.
Let's clip it then. Yo, bro, this was
Uh,
so much fun, man. I can't wait to hear this. And I honestly, I could talk for another 2 hours on these subjects. So let's run it back and do a sequel to this.
100%, man. I look forward to it, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the podcast just this one time. I'm looking forward to the next one already. I want to give you the floor. Where can the people find you? Plug anything and everything you got right now.
Yeah, go check out the podcast, Creators Are Brands, and check out my TikTok and Instagram bonus footage. And give your boy a review or don't give me a review. It's cool either way. And then yeah, find a sprint, a creative project that you and some close friends can put in action and make that first action today.
Awesome. I love it. I want to thank you once again for taking time to be on the podcast. And I want to thank everybody for listening, whether you listen the entire way through or you only listen to bits and pieces. I really appreciate you taking time to check this out. Everyone do me a big favor. Go and follow Tom. Go and subscribe to his podcast. I'll make sure everything's linked in the show notes down below so you can find it. And make sure to DM him. DM me as well what you choose your sprint to be. If you'd like to follow me, you can find me everywhere on social media at the Jacob Kelly. Feel free to come and say hello. My DMs are always open. As always, today's podcast is powered by True Fan. Thank you once again for listening. We'll talk soon.
You're a pro. Thanks, brother.